Before we can do our last decrease round, we have one last decrease round we need to do. Before we can do that, we need to attach the eyes and some of the other parts for the face. So let's do that now. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of stuffing in the head, not all the way. I just want to put enough stuffing so that I can kind of bulk up the head a little bit and see where the eyes are going to fall once I put them in. Okay, so now that I have the head a little bit stuffed, I'm actually going to take my snout right here and attach it. Not necessarily attach it yet, but we are going to pin it in place a little bit and then just kind of try and arrange things so that we can see how we want the face to look. So I've got my 2 orange pieces as well. And we actually need to take our safety eyes and put them through the orange pieces. So I like to go just above where it points and in this second round from the edge and put my safety eye through there. Don't attach the back yet. Just like that. All right, so it looks like that. You can kind of just look and eyeball kind of where you want this to go, because porgs have kind of high set eyes. So kind of like this is how we want it to look. This is going to be a little bit dangerous. I'm probably going to poke myself, but I'm going to pin this snout in place so that I can see where the eyes are going to be lined up with the snout. So it looks like I've attached this eye in the 8th row from the top, so I'm going to count down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then this is where my other eye is going to go. And then once you're satisfied with the position of the eyes, you can take your backs and attach them. It's very important, don't attach your backs until you are very happy with the placement of the eyes, because once these backs go on, they are not coming off. Or at least if you want to get them off, it'll be extremely difficult. Okay, so now we can stuff it the rest of the way. Just take your toy stuffing and stuff it the rest of the way. Okay, so before we actually sew this in place, we're gonna finish out this bottom portion. So get your crochet hook. All right, and now we're going to do our last decrease round, and we're going to decrease from 18 stitches down to 12 stitches by decreasing on every multiple of 3. So you're going to single crochet 1, decrease. So single crochet 1, and then 2 and 3 are decreased together. 4, and then 5 and 6 are decreased together. Now repeat that pattern 4 more times until you have 12 stitches. Okay, so I've come to the end of my round and now I should have 12 stitches. And now I'm actually going to cut my brown yarn, and then instead of slip stitching, I'm just going to pull this up through. And now take your tapestry needle and thread your yarn tail through. And we're going to sew the bottom closed by sewing through the front loop of every stitch. So find the front loop and just pull your yarn through. Then go over to the front loop of the next stitch and pull it through. Okay, and once you've done that for every stitch, just pull it tight, and that should create a nice clean closing. And then we're going to weave this yarn tail into the body to prevent it from coming loose. Okay, and then you can roll it around a little bit to distribute the stuffing. All right. And now we're gonna sew on these eyes. So take your tapestry needle and thread your orange yarn tail through. And let me zoom in so that you can see how I'm gonna sew. Now for pretty much every portion that we're gonna sew, we're gonna follow the same technique as what I'm about to show you. So what you do is you go into the body and out of the body like this. And then in the stitch directly above where you're coming out of the body, you come up like that, and then go over and back into this stitch where you came out of the body, just like that, and then over. So you're always sewing in the stitch directly above where you're coming out of the body. So we do this again, and then back into the body, and then over, just like that. So that's the sewing technique, and it creates a really nice join that doesn't look very noticeable, like it almost melts into the other pieces, which is why I really like it. So sew both of these eyes on using that same technique. All right, so next we're going to sew on the belly using the same technique as before. And what we need to do is line it up so that the kind of narrow egg portion is towards the top and the wider portion is towards the bottom, and make sure that it is centered with the eyes. Make sure that you're sewing this belly on before you sew on the snout, because the snout's going to overlap with the belly just a little bit. So you can pin it in place. And then sew this on using the same technique as before. All right, so next we're going to sew on the snout. And I'm going to take this yarn tail and just stuff it inside. We are going to stuff the snout a little bit, but I want to sew part of it in place before we do. So I'm going to line it up on the body like this, so that the points of the triangle are like that. All right, and when you have it partially sewn on, you can stuff it. All right, so now we're going to sew on the wings, and we're going to sew them on right about here. So you can pin them in place and sew them on using the same technique as before, and just sew them along the top. All right, so now we're going to assemble the feet. Then I'm going to thread my needle with the yarn tail from the foot. And then we are just going to sew it on like this, using the same technique as before. There's no special technique for the sewing of the foot. All right, and when it's all sewn in place, you can actually work this leftover yarn up to the top. And then make sure you keep this other yarn tail separate, but these two ones from the bottom that we worked up to the top, we're actually going to stuff down into the leg. Kind of stuff it a little bit. And then if your yarn tail's too long, you can always cut it. Okay. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our pipe cleaners and we're just gonna fold them in half like this. Cut 2 short pieces like I have here. And then we're gonna fold them in half. And then what's gonna happen is we're going to kind of line up the legs where we think we want them to go. So it's looking like just off to the side. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna stick these pipe cleaners in between two available stitches. Just kind of work it in there. And if it's too long, it might be too long, you can always fold the bottom up like that. So it essentially looks like that. All right, so you got 2 little peg legs like that. And then you're going to take your foot and put it over this little stub. And then we're gonna sew it on around the stub. So we're gonna sew this on using the same technique as before. Now this one might be a little more difficult to sew on just because it's a little more stiff, but just do your best. So if you position the legs right, it should be able to stand on its own. Yay, it can stand. All right, so the last thing we need to do is sew on the mouth, and I'm using gray yarn because I thought black might be a little too prominent. Now porgs have 2 nostrils and then a major frown happening. So I'm gonna put on the nostrils first, which are just gonna be 2 little stubs. Okay. And then for the frowny face, okay. There we go. So I'm gonna take my yarn tail and work about halfway down and then come up to the middle right there and then come down on the other side. Let's see, I've got 1, 2, 3, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Just like that. All right, and then I'm gonna weave the rest of my yarn in so that the mouth doesn't come out. All right, so here it is. This is our finished porg. Now, if you want, you can take some fabric stiffener and use it on the feet to help stiffen them out a little bit, but it's not essential. So if you like this video, please don't forget to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. If you want to see what else I'm working on, you can follow me on Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, Facebook, all of those places. You can also visit studiocrafty.com to check out all of my patterns, and I will see you in the next video.